You're sitting in a public bathroom in ancient Rome, marble bench. A row of holes cut into the stone, and next to you, less than 2 feet away, is a stranger. Also going, you're chatting about the weather. And when you're done, you reach for the only cleaning tool in the room, a sea sponge tied to a wooden stick sitting in a bucket of vinegar water. A sponge that everyone in this room has already used today. You use it. You put it back. The next guy picks it up. For almost all of human history, this was normal. Which raises a question you've probably never thought to ask. Toilet paper. Where did it come from? When did we start? And why did it take our species 300,000 years to figure out the single most obvious product ever invented? The answer involves a Chinese emperor, a corn cob, a national splinter problem, and one of the pettiest insults in ancient Greek history. Let's get into it. Start with the deep past. For most of our existence, humans used whatever was lying around. Leaves, grass, moss, water, snow if you lived somewhere cold and had made some bad decisions. Smooth stones. Your left hand in a huge portion of the world, which is exactly why the left hand became the unclean hand in so many cultures. That rule isn't random superstition. It's ancient public health policy, written directly into etiquette. But once people started living in cities, things got more creative. The ancient Greeks used pessoi, small, smoothed pieces of broken pottery. Yes, pottery. They cleaned themselves with shards of ceramic, sanded down at the edges, and archaeologists have dug them out of ancient latrines by the handful. And here's the detail that proves ancient people were exactly like us. In 2012, a researcher named Philippe Charlier published a study on classical toilet hygiene in a British medical journal. Among the pessoi, archaeologists have found ostraca, pottery shards with names scratched into them. The same shards Greeks used when voting to banish someone from the city. The suggestion, and scholars debate how common this was, is that some Greeks would take a shard bearing the name of a person they hated and wipe with it. That is a level of commitment to a grudge that Twitter can only dream of. The Romans upgraded to the sponge on a stick, the tersorium. Shared, communal, rinsed in vinegar or salt water between uses, which sounds sanitary until you remember that vinegar is not soap and the 1st century is not a time of germ theory. Some historians argue the sponge may have been used more like a toilet brush than a personal wipe. We honestly can't be sure. Either way, one shared sponge for a 20-seat public latrine was the height of Western bathroom technology. And it would stay that way for a very long time, because the actual answer to our question, the invention of real toilet paper, had already happened. Just not in the West, and when Westerners finally found out about it, their reaction was not gratitude, it was disgust. Toilet paper starts where paper starts, China. Around 105 AD, a court official named Cai Lun standardized paper making, and China spent the next few centuries putting paper into everything: books, money, wrapping, windows. And at some point, somebody in China looked at a sheet of paper and had the single most consequential bathroom idea in human history. We know it happened by the year 589. That year, a scholar named Yanji Tui wrote a book of advice for his family, and in it he included one rule: paper with quotations from the classics or the names of sages written on it. That paper he would not dare use for toilet purposes. Read that sentence again. He's not proposing the idea, he's setting boundaries on it. Which means by 589 AD, wiping with paper was already so ordinary in China that a gentleman needed etiquette rules about which paper was off limits. That throwaway line is the first documented toilet paper in human history. 1400 years before your bathroom. And China didn't stop there. In 851, an Arab traveler visited China and wrote home, baffled, that the Chinese do not wash themselves with water. They only wipe themselves with paper. He meant it as criticism. Most of the world cleaned with water and considered dry paper vaguely barbaric. The Chinese did not care. By the early 1300s, one region of China was reportedly manufacturing 10 million packages of toilet paper a year. And by 1393, records from the Ming Imperial Court show an annual order of 720,000 sheets for the palace at Nanjing. Each sheet roughly 2 feet by 3 feet, which is less a square of toilet paper and more a beach towel. The emperor's own family got a special order, thousands of sheets, soft, cut small, and perfumed. So in 1393, the Chinese emperor is using scented toilet paper. Keep that image in your head. Because at that exact moment, over in Europe, kings and queens, the richest, most powerful people in the Western world, are using rags, wool, moss, and their hands. And here's the part that should bother you. Europe knew about paper. Europe eventually had plenty of paper. The idea sat right there, fully proven, for centuries, and the West just didn't take it. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question this video is actually about. Forget ancient Rome. What was your family using? Because toilet paper in your house is much, much more recent than you think. Here's the timeline nobody tells you. Commercial toilet paper wasn't successfully sold in America until the 20th century, not the 1800s, the 1900s. Which means if your family has been in America a few generations, your great-grandparents, people who existed in photographs, people whose names you know, almost certainly did not grow up with toilet paper. What did they use? In rural America, mainly two things. The first was the corn cob, dried, softened, reusable, and hanging from a string in the outhouse. Farm families produced them by the barrel as a byproduct of, well, corn. And by most accounts, it worked better than you'd think, which is a sentence I never expected to say out loud. The second was the catalog. The Sears Roebuck catalog was hundreds of pages of free, soft, uncoated paper mailed directly to your home, with a hole conveniently punched for hanging on a nail. Farmers' almanacs came pre-drilled for the same reason. Americans read the catalog, ordered from the catalog, and then, page by page, used the catalog. There's an old joke that people called it Rears and Roebuck. And the story goes that when Sears switched to glossy-coated paper in the 30s, customers actually complained. Because glossy paper, as anyone who has tried in an emergency can confirm, does not absorb anything. So who finally tried to sell Americans actual toilet paper? A New Yorker named Joseph Gaiety in 1857. He sold flat sheets infused with aloe, marketed as medicated paper for the water closet, a treatment for hemorrhoids, with his own name proudly watermarked on every sheet. 500 sheets for 50 cents, which was serious money at the time. It flopped. And the reason it flopped is perfect. Nobody wanted to pay for something they were already getting free in the mail. Gaiety was asking Americans to buy blank paper when Sears was shipping them a phone book of it every season. He was a visionary. He was also, commercially speaking, an idiot. The role came next. In 1871, Seth Wheeler of Albany patented rolled, perforated wrapping paper. He's the reason toilet paper is a roll, and by the way, his patent drawings settled the great debate. The paper goes over the top, not under. In 1890, the Scott Paper Company started selling toilet paper rolls at scale. And here's my favorite detail. The Scotts were so embarrassed by their own product that they wouldn't put their name on it. Toilet paper was unmentionable. Stores kept it out of sight. You didn't ask for it by name. The product that would make the Scott family rich was sold for years in something close to shame. What finally broke the embarrassment? Plumbing. Once indoor toilets spread in the early 20th century, people needed something that would actually flush without destroying the pipes. Catalog pages clog. Corn cobs, do not attempt. Toilet paper stopped being a luxury and became infrastructure. But early toilet paper had a quality control issue, and I need you to sit with this. The manufacturing process sometimes left tiny splinters of wood in the paper. Splinters in toilet paper. This was common enough that in 1935, Northern Tissue ran ads for its big innovation, splinter-free toilet paper. That was the selling point. That was the ad. Which tells you everything you need to know about the competition. Two-ply didn't arrive until 1942 from a paper mill in England. Your grandparents may be older than soft toilet paper. So, the actual answer to the title. When did humans start using toilet paper? China, by the 500s. The West. Not really until about 100 years ago. On the timeline of our species, toilet paper isn't an ancient companion. It's a brand new gadget. If human history were a single day, toilet paper showed up in the last few seconds before midnight, and only in some rooms of the house. Because here's the final twist. Most of the world still doesn't primarily use it. Across much of Asia, the Middle East, and beyond, water is the standard. Bidets, hoses, sprayers, and by most hygiene arguments, water does a better job. Remember that Arab traveler in 851 disgusted that the Chinese wiped with dry paper instead of washing? More than 1,000 years later, a huge share of humanity still agrees with him. Japan, meanwhile, skipped ahead to heated seats and built-in washing, and looks back at the rest of us with polite concern. We are not the endpoint of bathroom history. We might be a phase, and yet, in the spring of 2020, when the modern world got genuinely scared for the first time in a generation, what did people fight over in supermarket aisles? Not food, not medicine, toilet paper. A product our species did without for 299,000 years became the one thing we could not imagine living without for 2 weeks. The Greeks wiped with their enemies' names. The Romans shared a sponge. Your great-grandmother used a catalog, and you have a soft, 2-ply, splinter-free roll waiting at home right now. Try to act like you've earned it.